This is Margaret Ferguson, and I am going to be doing the judges training for the Regional Speech and Debate Competition, the Migrant Education Regional Speech and Debate Competition that will be held on March 28th, 2015 at Woodland Community College. Now, I want to get a couple housekeeping things out of the way, and that is the fact that there will be a practice competition on February 28th, also at Woodland Community College, and actually they may be practices in different areas. I'm not 100% positive about that, but at the area practices, there will be one round of prepared, one round of extemporaneous, and 2 rounds of debate. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is the fact that the debate topic will be different than the topic that will be used at the regional tournament. At the regional tournament, there will also be 2 rounds of prepared speeches, 1 round of extemporaneous, and 3 rounds of debate. So now I'm going to go ahead and move right into this. How the tournament works. Okay, we're going to give you some brief overviews and some steps, and then we'll get into a few more specific details on both prepared, extemporaneous speeches and the debate. Students will be given topics for prepared speech and debate. They will have had plenty of time to have researched their topics and prepared their speeches. So therefore, in the prepared speeches especially, there will be no preparation time, no few minutes to go over their speeches before they get up in front of the judges. Because again, like I said, they've been working on their speeches for a couple of months now. What I want is, as well, is that judges need to keep in mind who it is they're judging. Some of you will be judging middle school, which is the 6th through 8th graders, while others will have high school debaters, 9th through 12th. Keep that in mind. Debate students will be debating in what's called a round robin style, and they will flip a coin to decide which team is affirmative or pro, that's another way of putting it, or negative or con. In the debates, each member of a debate team must participate. When you arrive, you'll be given a packet, and in those packets you will have copies of the ballots. You'll have a few sheets of paper for taking notes. You'll have pens, pencils, stopwatches, and hopefully at the regional tournament we will have enough individuals present to help with the tournament to provide you with someone that will actually keep the time for you. If you need anything during the tournament, remember that things will be run from the tally room out to and back to the rooms where the competition is being held. Runners will pick up ballots and they'll turn them in for tabulation. You should again have extra ballots. You'll have the paper. You'll also have a copy of the schedule, and you'll be advised to ask questions. If you have questions, please ask. Now, one thing I also want to remind you is you may have 2 to 3 judges in a room. You are individual judges. Each of you are expected to judge your competitors individually. You don't collaborate to decide which one was the best speaker in the room, or which team of debaters was the best debate team. You make that decision as an individual. Now I'm going to go over some steps that we've developed to help you with this process. And I want you to remember, those competitors are going to be as nervous as you are as a first-time judge. So you want to make them comfortable in the room. That's one of the things I want you to do. Make your competitors comfortable. Talk to them, let them know who will be keeping time if you have a separate timekeeper or if it will be you. Tell them to take a nice deep breath, to relax, that it will make for a much better competition if we all do that. So now I'm going to go over some of these steps that we developed. Step 1, make sure you as a judge are in the right room at the right time. In order to keep things moving, it's important that we keep to a schedule. And like I said, you'll have a schedule for the rounds in your packet. It'll list the room number, the school and the debaters for each team or speaker in a given room, and it'll even have the names of the judges. When you find your name, you go directly to that room when everyone is released to start the competition. When you get to the room, you want to make sure that you have the correct speakers in your room, and that's in the case of the prepared speeches and the extemporaneous speeches, and that you have the correct 2 teams if you are judging a debate. You should never judge a team from your own school. Or if you're in the room and a debate team or a person that's doing prepared speech comes in and you know them really well, you need to send a note right away to the tally room so that they can make any adjustments as necessary. They make the changes, any changes that happen. And the reason for this is that we are keeping track of everything in the computer. So if something changes, if you change a competitor or just go to the next room and say, you know what, I know this young person, let's trade. Then all the basic beginning information that was in the computer has now changed, only the tally room doesn't know it, and it will create problems. So again, if something needs to be corrected or fixed, you need to send an adult, one of the adult judges, to the tally room to inform them. Step 2, fill out the ballot correctly before the speech or the debate begins. Again, you'll have ballots in your packet, and there's roughly three types of information that needs to be put on that ballot. There's administrative data, which is names of the competitors, school district information, and we'll go over that a little bit more further into the presentation. You'll put in your scores and critiques. And there's a brief, you want to write a brief critique area where it's necessary, and you can put it, on the edge or on the back of the ballot as necessary. And I want you to remember something. When you are doing your critiques, they are positive critiques. What you want to do is let that competitor know what they can do better. And it never hurts to put in a compliment on the things that they did do really well. So again, the administrative information will be the team names for the debates and the student name, your name as the judge, the districts, the grade, the school name, and scores. The scores are what will help determine, obviously, who won and how well they did in order to award trophies at the end of the tournament. Critique is important because we want to improve their skills. And obviously, scoring is going to determine who the winners are. Step 3 is to keep time and keep order during the speeches and the debate. You're the judges. You control the room. Timing for the prepared speeches for grades 6 through 8 will be a minimum of 3 minutes and a maximum of 4 minutes. For grades 9 through 12, it will be a minimum of 4 minutes with a maximum of 5 minutes. Extemporaneous speeches for all grades 6 through 12 will be a minimum of 2 minutes and a maximum of 4 minutes. In step 4 is all about taking notes. In addition to, keeping time, if you don't have a timekeeper, moving the speeches and the debates along, it's important that you take notes. And the reason for that is that by the end of a given speech or debate, if you haven't taken notes, then you're not going to remember everything that was said. So you want to take notes that tell you that in the debate that they were following format, that what kind of arguments they made, were those arguments addressed by the opposing team or not. During the speech, you want to talk about or write notes that deal with did they have a good introduction? Did they make some main points? Did they support those points with some evidence and good logical reasoning? Did they close recapping their position? In the debates, it's almost the same thing. Did they make good arguments? Did they support those arguments? Did they rebut their opponent's arguments? In the speeches and in the debates, you also want to look for did they make good eye contact? Can you hear them? Are they changing their tone of their voice to make points? Have they used some hand gestures? How are they presenting themselves? And even you want to look at how professionally they dressed. Now, step 5 is totaling the scores for each speaker, and again, going back over a written brief critique. After all the speakers are finished with their speeches, you want to ask them to leave the room and close the door. There may be other debaters and speakers waiting to enter the room for the next round, but you ask them to stay outside while you take a few minutes to complete the ballots for each of your speakers. Or for the debates, especially, for each team to complete the ballot. When you're doing the speeches, you'll have several competitors in the room. You should take those couple minutes between competitors to complete the ballot for a speaker. Because if you have 10 competitors in the room, you may not necessarily be able to go back through your notes and complete all 10 ballots at one time. So take a few minutes to do a general scoring. You may not want to do the critique until you've let everybody leave the room, but have a good idea of how you're going to score each one of those individual speakers. In step 6, ballots will be picked up by runners. So be sure to have your ballots completely filled out, organized, and ready to be picked up within about 5 minutes before the next round begins. Do not leave a room or leave the tournament with a ballot. There's some additional things that I want you to keep in mind. Speech and debate, it's a learning experience for the students, and that includes dressing appropriately for their audience. While some attire might be great for a social event, that same attire isn't going to be great for a formal presentation. Remember that inappropriate attire sometimes distracts from the speaker or the debater's message. Competitors should be, you need to, let me back up. You want to ensure that they're presenting themselves as professionals, that the young ladies, the hemlines aren't so extremely short that all you notice are the young ladies' legs, or that there are plunging necklines, or jewelry that distracts. And again, that's something that you can write in a critique to help them. Your earrings were beautiful earrings. However, they were so long and dangly that every time you went to make a point, they just swung all over the place, and my attention went to those earrings instead of what you were saying. Young ladies shouldn't have excessive makeup. It's business attire. For the young men, you want them hopefully dressed in slacks and a nice dress shirt and tie. A jacket's encouraged. Girls, a pantsuit, a nice skirt, blouse, or dresses. And again, all on the conservative side. Neat and clean. Now I'm going to move on to the actual guidelines for the speech and debate, the judges for the instructions for the speech tournament. And we're going to start with the prepared and extemporaneous speeches. And I do want you to also understand that we are so very appreciative of you being a judge. This tournament, these opportunities for these young migrant students to speak in front of an audience is a life skill. They need to understand that, speaking, although it's nerve-wracking to get up in front of someone, the more you do it, the better you can present yourself, whether that's in a simple debate or presentation to your parents on something that you want to do, to a presentation or presenting yourself in an interview for college, an interview for jobs. Your entire lifetime, you use your speaking skills. And that's why I say this is a life skill. And you as a judge, by helping us put these tournaments on, are allowing for these young students to learn that life skill. Now, students must compete in both prepared and extemporaneous speech, and it can be either all in Spanish or all in English, not both. You may have a prepared speech where they use a word in their speech to make a point that's in Spanish, and it's not something that can be easily translated. That's just a simple word to make a point, and that's okay. That's not doing a prepared speech in Spanish and English. It is a prepared speech in English with one or two words to make a point. Now, winners will be determined for each, for the prepared and the extemporaneous contest. Only those, there'll be awards for first, second, and third place for, the prepared and extemporaneous competition, but only first place winners of prepared speeches will move forward to the state competition. If there's a tie for the prepared speeches between first and third, extemporaneous speech scores will be used to break those ties. And this is just basically information for you, because that will occur in the tally room, as they are the ones that are actually telling or placing the students in first, second, and third based on the scores that you gave them. Again, prepared speeches, For 6th through 8th grade, they need a minimum of 3 minutes, a maximum of 4. 9th through 12th, minimum of 4 minutes, maximum of 5. The students will select 2 topics from a prepared list that have been given to them already. And again, they can compete in English or Spanish. There'll be no prep time provided during the tournament. Now, if they do speak less than the 3 minutes for 6th through 8th, or more than the 4 minutes for 6th through 8th, there's a 30-second grace period. That's the same grace period for 9th through 12th graders who have a minimum of 4 minutes and a maximum of 5. So in other words, if you have a 6th through 8th grader who speaks for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, no penalty point will be deducted because they're within the grace period. If they go 4 minutes and 30 seconds, no penalty will be afforded because they're still within the 30-second grace period. The same holds for the 9th through 12th. 3 minutes and 30 seconds, no penalty because they're within the grace period. And if they go 5 minutes and 30 seconds, they're still within that grace period. However, if they go 5 minutes and 40 seconds, then you need to deduct a point. Or if they are short a minute, you need to deduct a point. Whatever it is they're short. There's only a 30-second grace period on either side. Now, students or the speakers can't use any props or visual aids of any kind. They can, however, use notes, and those notes can be cards, or they can be 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. For the extemporaneous speeches, and that's the same criteria from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, the minimum time is 2 minutes, the maximum time is 4 minutes. The most important thing to understand about extemporaneous speaking is the fact that the students don't receive their topic until about 5 minutes before they're going to make their speech. So what will happen is they'll get a topic 5 minutes before. They will be timed, and during that time frame, they'll not only get a topic, they'll get some paper and they'll have a pencil, and they can, at that time, write notes for themselves, decide what they're going to say about the topic. They'll then be called to the front, and a timer will give them time signals, because remember, they're not going to know when 4 minutes has passed or if they're going over. How you decide to give those time signals, you can work with the student, or you can say, I will give you time signals 2 minutes and up. In other words, when you hit 2 minutes in your speech, I'll put up a sign, a hand signal that says 2. When you've hit 3, I'll do 3 minutes. 4. So that you know when you hit 4 minutes, now you only have a 30-second grace period. Speakers in extemporaneous speaking can use notes, or they can recite from memory. Again, the notes they'll be having will be the paper that was handed to them. The presentations will be in English or Spanish, not both. And the winners of the extemporaneous speech will place first, second, and third. But first place winners of extemporaneous do not move on to the state championship. As well, as was noted earlier, if there are ties in the prepared speeches for first, second, or third, then extemporaneous speech scores will be used to break those ties. On this next sheet here, or page, is a list of the topics that were given to 6th through 8th graders, and again, the minimum times and the maximum times. I won't go over each one of those because obviously they're listed both in English and Spanish. But again, the speech that's given in your room has to be one of these topics. It cannot be a topic that is not listed on this page for 6th through 8th graders. As we move on to the next page, we have the topics for prepared speeches for 9th through 12th grade, as well as the minimum and maximum times. And I'll reiterate that they will have chosen 2 topics from these lists in either English or Spanish. The speech that they present to you must be from this list. And in the regional tournament, they cannot give the same speech twice. There must be 2 separate topics. So speech number 1 might be fracking causes more harm than good. And their second speech may be torture is justified as an interrogation method when national security is at risk. But they cannot do the same speech for both rounds. As we move on to the next page, this is the rubric that we use for the prepared and extemporaneous speeches that gives you an idea of what to look for and what the scores. It also gives you the scoring. An excellent would be 4 points, a good rating 3, 2, and 1 down to needs improvement with 1. It goes over and it gives you information on did they give you, someone that's going to get an excellent, in their introduction, did they bring you right into their speech? Did they hook you? Did they clearly tell you what they're talking about? And did they lay out what their arguments are going to be? They'll move on to the body, where they talk about the main arguments. And are they supported? Did they give you some credible evidence? Or did they use really good examples to persuade you? They must also provide counter arguments. In other words, they need to tell you that they understand an opposing viewpoint, and they need to challenge that opposing viewpoint. In their conclusion, did they thoroughly and briefly review their main points again? Did they bring closure to you? The other things you're going to be looking for, are they using, is their word choice inventive? Are they descriptive in their details? Their use of language, its use of academic vocabulary. Were they topic specific? Did they use good sentence structure, good grammar? In their speaking qualities, number 7, do they deliberately pause where they need to? Are they using good intonation, enunciation? Are they talking too fast, or are they giving you a nice rate of speaking? Are they speaking up where they need to? Eye contact. Are they giving you eye contact? Are they using eye contact with the audience? And remember, they can use notes, so they can briefly look down to their notes. But you still want them to be able to really bring their points across to you and make eye contact when necessary. Someone who just reads their entire speech and makes no eye contact is going to be scored needs improvement. Their body language. Did they use gestures, facial expression? Maybe they work the room. They walk to one side to make a point. They come back to the center. Their overall appearance and poise. Are they appropriately attired? And remember, appropriately attired might not be perfect every time. Maybe a young man didn't have a pair of slacks and was unable to get slacks, but had a very nice clean pair of jeans on with a very nice, button-down shirt. The time for, again, will be on the rubrics, and I've gone over it and stressed it enough. 3 for 6th through 8th grade, 3-minute minimum, 4-minute max, with a 30-second grace period on either side. 9th through 12th, 4-minute minimum, 5-minute maximum, 30-second grace period on either side. Next page is actually the ballot, and you can see up there that you'll write in the student name, what grade, what school, what district. Then it has, you'll mark whether it's the first round of prepared speech or the second round of prepared speech, or if it's your extemporaneous, you will circle whether the presentation is Spanish or English. And you have again here pretty much the overall criteria to use for scoring. The introduction. So you're going to give them a score of 4. They were just awesome. They just hooked you right at the beginning. Or they didn't explain to you anything about what they were really going to say or talk about. So then that's a 1. Any deductions will be shown at the right there where we, as you can see on the page where it says the time prepared speech or extemporaneous, and if you need to make any deductions there in that in that square where it says -1 or 0 points. So it can be 1 point or it can be more than 1 point depending on. Oh, I'm sorry, I take that back. It would only be 1 point deduction for time issues. You'll print and sign your name. Now I'm going to move on to the instructions for the debate. For those judges that will be scoring debates. The high school topic at the regional tournament will be either, if they're on the pro side or affirmative, raising the minimum wage benefits society. In Spanish, it would be aumentar el salario mínimo beneficia a la sociedad. On the con or negative side, it would be raising the minimum wage does not benefit society. In Espanol, and pardon my Spanish, I'm not always perfect. Aumentar el salario mínimo no rinda beneficios a la sociedad. Now the middle school debate topics, pro or affirmative, are zoos should be abolished, or las. So, and I'm going to mess it up, so I'm not even going to try, except to say, well, I'll give it a whirl. Los zoológicos deben ser abolidos. On the con or negative side, zoos should not be abolished, or los zoológicos no deben ser abolidos. Now remember, those topics are for the regional tournament that will be held on March 28th. For your area practice tournaments, the topics will be different by area or may be the same. That's something that you need to check with your own tournament groups for the practice tournament. Okay, the debate overview. Debate teams will either be in Spanish or English, but they will not be both. They need to be prepared, teams need to be prepared to either debate the affirmative or pro position or the negative con position for the topic for each of their grade levels. by the time that you judge these competitors, should have already thoroughly researched their topic. They should be able to cite some evidence from credible sources. They should be able to give you some compelling arguments for their position. The other thing you have to remember, there are different positions in the debate team. And each team will be assigned their side after a coin toss in the room. Then they'll be told whether they're going to be affirmative or negative. And we're going to go through some of the structure in the following pages on the debate. Right here under scoring, for you as a judge, what you want to remember is you're scoring content, the quality of their arguments, their evidence, their agility or their ability to counter their opposing team arguments. They can use personal opinion, but it has to be logical and it has to be relevant. Their presentation, you might have point penalties result for debate statements or arguments being read as opposed to being presented. In other words, the debate isn't about reading what your position is completely or your argument. You want to be able to debate that individual. We will go over the protocols, and again, there'll be first, second, and third places for each grade level span. In other words, for the middle school and for the high school. How many debates actually happen will depend on how many debate teams we actually have. But for the regional tournament, each team will debate for at least 4 rounds. Here's some additional information on this page as well. The judge or moderator, and if we're fortunate and have enough staff to help, there'll be the judge or judges and a moderator that will assist the judges, to announce the debate. The judge, again, remember, you control the room. So you'll call the debate to order. You maintain order. You keep time, either the judge or a timekeeper. You need to remember that they shouldn't just be reading from prepared statements. They want to make a presentation, but they can have 3x5 cards to refer to, as long as they're not just reading. You want them to make eye contact with the debaters and even with you. Every member of the team must speak. Every speaker must ask permission from the judges to speak. No participant should speak unless they have the floor. If members of either team start to speak or whisper during the time a speaker has the floor, you're going to deduct points for that team because of that. Comments or critiques are really important in the debates. You want to give this on the evaluation forms after the competition is over. Take the time to give them a good critique. I would caution, some debate teams or some judges like to give verbal critiques, but remember that verbal critiques slow down the tournament, especially if they become really long. If you do that, it has to be very, very brief, because remember, it slows down the tournament. Now we'll move on to anatomy of a debate. These are the 5 phases of a formal debate, and this area gives you an idea of what each person's role on the debate team is. In the opening, you have the opener. That individual is responsible for presenting the overall argument of or position on the topic. That's their job. Then you move on to the cross-examination phase, and you'll have a lead cross-examiner. And one of the things that is different this year, and you need to pay attention to, and you should deduct points for this if it happens, is that the examiner asks the opposing team questions on their opening statements. They challenge arguments and evidence. Excuse me. Pardon me. But after the lead cross-examiner has posed at least 2 questions, they must pose 2 questions, they can open the questions to their own teams. The lead responder and the lead rebutter may also ask questions. But the cross-examination is opened by the lead cross-examiner and closed by the lead examiner. So ideally, each team should be asking at least 3 questions. Response. The lead responder answers questions about the team's position that occurred during the cross-examination. The lead responder opens the responses, and after the lead responder addresses at least 2 of the opposing team's questions, the lead cross-examiner or rebutter may also respond to questions. But remember, lead responder opens, lead responder closes that section of the debate. We move on to the rebuttal. The lead rebutter initiates the rebuttal phase. They challenge all the answers that were given by the opposing team. The lead rebutter opens the rebuttal phase and closes the rebuttal phase. The lead rebuttal must address at least 2 of the opposing team's responses. But then they can open it up to their own team's cross-examiner and lead responder to also address responses. But again, they open this section of the debate and they close it. And they should respond to at least 2 of the responses that were given by the opposing team. We move then on to the closing. The closer sums up the team's position. They refer to any new issues that were raised during the debate. They review the evidence supporting their team's position. What you're looking for is that all 5 of these individuals participated and worked as a team to convince you that their position was the winning position. And I cannot stress again, all members must participate. And really, during each phase of the debate, you might take a moment to also look and pay, because when, for instance, when they open up their debate, the opener, the opposing team should be taking notes, and vice versa. During each of those phases, the opposing teams should be taking notes so that they can either give good cross-examination on their opening so that they can rebut questions that were asked, so that they can respond. There may be teams that have fewer than 5 individuals. If they do, there can be some with maybe 3 or 4. then one team member or two team members will take a dual role. But let's say you have a team of 3. One team member, that means that 2 of the team members have to do 2 of the roles. It doesn't mean that one of them does 3 of the roles, their own plus 2 others. So keep that in mind. As we move on to the debate structure and procedures, this actually kind of gives you a format for times. You know, the judge moderator is going to call the debate to order, announce the debate. You maintain order. If we're very fortunate, you'll have a timekeeper. The judges will identify who's going to debate what side, af or neg, and they do that by a coin toss. Once that is decided and assigned, then both sides have 5 minutes to prep. And the reason for this is, remember, they don't know until they walk into that room which side of the debate they will be doing. So they need that 5 minutes to get themselves organized and get ready to do their presentation. The affirmative position begins, and they will do their opening statement, and they have 4 minutes to make their presentation. At the close of the affirmative presentation, the negative position or presentation will be made, and they also have 4 minutes for that presentation. At the end of the opening statements, there is what we call prep time. Both teams will be given 2 minutes of prep time. During that time, each one of the debate sides can group together, they can talk, they can whisper, they can look at their notes and get ready. After the prep time has been closed, and remember, the timekeeper or you as a judge, if it comes down to that, will call and keep prep time as well, letting them know it's the start, and then let them know you have at least 30 seconds left and then time. Next then up will be the affirmative cross-examiner. And remember, it's their job to ask questions of the negative side. They must ask at least 2 questions. Then they can open it up to the responder or the rebutter to ask questions. But they will also close the questioning period. That's 2 minutes. So remember, they will be given time signals, or you can call out the beginning of the 2 minutes, and you can either do time signals down to 1 and 30 seconds in time, or call it out. The negative cross-examiner will move in next, and they also have the same 2 minutes. Their lead cross-examiner will question the affirmative team about their presentation that they made, their opening statement, and the same thing will happen there. That cross-examiner must ask at least 2 questions, then they can open it up to the responder or rebutter, and they must close it. Then there will be another 2 minutes of preparation time. After prep time is over, then we will start with the affirmative response. The lead affirmative responder will be answering the questions that were asked by the negative team about their position. They must answer at least 2 of their questions, and then they can open it up to the cross-examiner and the rebutter and to respond to questions. They must close the response as well. Then you'll move on to the negative responder with the same format. They'll respond to 2 questions of the affirmative position or arguments, and then they can open it up to the cross-examiner and the rebutter, but they must close the response period. 2 more minutes of prep time will be given. At the close of the 2 minutes, we move on to the affirmative rebuttal. The lead rebutter will start to refute the answers that were given by the negative team during the response phase. The rebutter should also at least rebut two of the answers, and then they can open it up to the cross-examiner and the responder. And they must close the rebuttal phase. You'll move on. They have 3 minutes for that. You'll move on to the negative rebuttal. And again, the same format. The lead rebutter will initiate the refutation or rebuttal to questions or answers that were given, not questions, answers that were provided by the affirmative team during the response phase. At least 2 items have to be addressed, and then they can open it up to the cross-examiner and the responder to assist. The rebutter must close this period as well. We move on then to the last 2 minutes of prep time. At the close of the prep time, it's time for the summation or the closer. The lead closer presents closing arguments for the affirmative position. They sum up their arguments, their evidence, and how they responded to issues. They've got 3 minutes to do this. And a good closer will cover all the material as quickly as possible, and they will make their point for why their position is the winning position. After 3 minutes, then we will move on to the negative closer, who will do the exact same thing, closing arguments for the negative position. Remember, they're summing up their arguments, their evidence. They're pointing out to you that they responded to issues that were raised. They may not necessarily respond to every single issue, but they may choose in the closing to say, you know, the 2 most important issues that were raised were this, and we responded to those issues, making it clear, again, why our position is the winning position. One of the things that the student competitors are being advised, or we're giving an example, that when they close each phase, the middle phases especially, basically the cross-examination, the response, and the rebuttal, that they might close with something like, if none of my teammates have any further questions or comments, this concludes our cross-examination of the either our cross-examination, response, or rebuttal. Now, the next up on the screen is the debate evaluation form. You can see it has 4 rounds up there. You'll complete that top section with the affirmative team name, school, and area, the negative team name, school, and area, what level, whether they're middle school or high school, and if it's in English or Spanish. Those debates or debaters that were totally unprepared would be scoring in the 1 to 2 range. If they just did a poor job of their presentations, 3 to 4. If they were good, 5 to 6. Excellent, 7 to 8. Exceptional. Exceptional is that, my God, they made a opening statement that was, they set out what the topic was, what their position was, what their arguments were going to be. In their cross-examination, they used that cross-examination time completely, asking excellent questions of the opposing team. During the rebuttal phase, they provided outstanding answers to all the questions that were asked. They covered them with excellent logic or evidence, or compelling logic and evidence. In the response section, they responded to the rebuttals, again, completely covering their position as well as telling you why the opposing team's position wasn't as good as theirs or what was wrong with it. And they closed up, summing up everything. Their position, what their arguments were, and how they addressed their opponent's arguments and position. Then you might give them an exceptional. On top of that, when they made their presentations, they spoke with confidence. They made eye contact. They demonstrated passion for their position. They were dressed appropriately, and they stayed within all those criteria of each one of those sections. Deductions can occur for time, but they have a 59-second grace period. So in other words, the total debate time is 16 minutes. If you add up each one of those sections, the 4 minutes, the 3 minutes, the 2 minutes that were allowed for the speaking, not the prep time, it should be a total of 16 minutes. If they overall go 16 minutes and 50 seconds, there would be no deduction. If they go 16 minutes and 59 seconds, there's no deduction. But if they go 17 minutes total, 1 minute over the total time allowed, then there's a point deduction. But remember, it's the overall 16 minutes. So in other words, if the opener gives their presentation and they do 5 minutes instead of 4 minutes, you would make note of that somewhere in your notes, but you're not going to do a deduction yet because somewhere else they may have adjusted, they may have opted that they needed that extra minute there, and they shorten their closing or their response time by a minute. They're still within the 16-minute time frame. So look at it as an overall 16 minutes. Your timekeeper will do that for you. There's a couple things I do want to go back and reiterate or bring up. During the prepared speeches, and if a competitor starts to go over time, even beyond the grace period, please don't stop them. Don't stop them, because what you do is you startle them, you upset them, because now they know they've done something really wrong. They will get to know everything that happened from your critique on the sheets. And you may make a point of it then, that you went excessively past time. Go through your speech and cut it down so that you're within time constraints. If you have a prepared speaker for the prepared speeches that comes up, begins their speech, and is just so nervous that they get lost after a couple seconds, and don't let them just go back to their seat and say, I can't do it. What you want to do is be a gracious judge. This, especially in the practice tournament, you want to say, stop. It's okay. Take a nice deep breath, shake it off, and let's start again. And start them again. You want them to feel good about this experience, not to walk away so shattered that they'll never get up and speak in front of anyone again. During the debates, the thing that you also want to look for, and as a judge you can do, is it's one thing to be passionate about your position. But what you want to look for is that they are not excessively cruel. In other words, on the other side, that they are not badgering and being rude and no foul language whatsoever. If that starts to happen, stop them right then and there and say, we will be respectful in this debate. In fact, I would also tell you that at the beginning of the debate, before you actually start any of the timing, remind them to be respectful of their fellow competitors. Remind them to speak up, because if you as a judge cannot hear an argument, how can you score it? Remind them that, oh gosh, I just lost my thought. Hate when that happens. That you're looking for a good debate. That you want them to present their positions well. Thank them at the end of each of the debates. And again, like in the very beginning, whether it's for prepared speeches or the debates, let them know that, hey, I'm a new judge. I'm a little bit nervous too. But we're all going to take some deep breaths. We're going to relax. And we're going to do the best job that we can. And hopefully there won't be too many questions. The packets are pretty self-explanatory. And I thank you. And hopefully I didn't have too many ands and ums. There I go, doing it just after I said that. And I want you to understand, we really do appreciate you helping with these tournaments. And remember, there are going to be some small nuances, differences between the practice tournament on February 28th and the regional tournament on March 28th. But the goal here is to send the very best to the state tournament to represent our area. The goal for the debate and the speech practice tournament is to get these young competitors prepared to do their very best at the regional tournament. Give them good critiques. Don't be rude in your critiques. We want to encourage these young people to keep speech and debate in their future and to learn from it and take it forward as a life skill. Thank you.